But if you know where you are isn't where you're supposed to be, then you know your next step is somewhere else.
You're listening to The Traditional Millennial with Brittany Dotson, where conventional meets contemporary and faith fills the gaps. Welcome back to The Traditional Millennial. I am your host, Brittany Dotson, and I am super pumped about today's episode because we have an amazing guest with us who's doing amazing things. So I cannot wait to just get into this conversation with her today. So today on the episode, we have Dr. Mia Phillips with us. So Mia is a seasoned educator. She's an entrepreneur who has years of experience. She uses this experience to build strategies and help to build programs that strengthen organizations and also help them to carry out their goals. But not only does she do this for the common non-religious organization, she is also utilizing her abilities and her superpowers to help the church. So she's a woman who is advancing her community and also advancing the kingdom. So welcome to you, Mia.
Thank you so much for having me, Brittany. I'm
Yes.
so excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. So, Mia, I really want to just go ahead and dive into the conversation so we can get to, chatting about some things. So before we actually get started, why don't you just give us a little background into what it is exactly that you do?
Sure. So one of the things that I do is focus on helping organizations, as you said, build strategy. And that looks different for every person, every organization, every program. But I specifically help nonprofits, small businesses, entrepreneurs, and as you said, churches. That's where my passion is. That's where my heart is. The church has meant so much to me just as an individual. It's where I say I got my start. And so what I do is I go in and I help identify gaps or problems that church may be facing, and just help them work through it. Because sometimes you just need somebody who can help you, who doesn't have a dog in the hunt, if you will, who's not tied to anything emotionally, that can just help you see what your next steps are so that you can get to the point where you want to get to. So I do that. In addition to, I work full time as an operations manager for a nonprofit. I'm a mom, a wife. I've got 2 amazing kids and an amazing husband. So yeah, I'm just a little busy, but but it's good. I enjoy it. It's something that God has blessed me to do, and I just really appreciate it.
Ah, that's so awesome, Mia. That's so awesome. See, I knew you were on this episode for a reason. I knew you were. You were on the podcast for a reason. So, Mia, I know that now you work for a nonprofit organization full time, but you have been in education. And so whenever you got started, can you just walk us through your decision initially to become an educator? Like what motivated this for you, and did this decision to go into academics lead to you becoming an entrepreneur?
That is a great question. So, as far as how I got started, I don't even necessarily know that I decided to end up in education, and specifically higher education. I think I just kind of fell into it. So, I went to school for writing. I was the child that changed their major 57 times. Parents were like, "What are you doing at this university? Like, are you really going to school or are you just playing?" So I didn't really know what my path was after graduation. I just knew I had to have a job to support myself. And so I was applying, and I got one job, and that led to another one, and that one led me to work at a university. And I was doing the writing. Actually, I was be able to use my degree, which is wonderful, right? But I was in that environment, and I saw the challenges that students were facing. I saw the challenges that institutions were facing, and I'm like, man, it's challenging, but it's so fun. Like, I enjoyed problem solving and figuring out solutions to help people get stuff done. And so I worked there a couple of years. I'm like, I want to do this. And so I decided that I was going to go back and get my doctorate because I knew as a young Black woman, I had to have that credential to be in the spaces where the decisions were being made,
Hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
policy was being created, where the real, ability to help people and affect change was happening. So I went back to school again. Thankfully, everybody was supportive. But I did that, worked full time. I was married, had kids, but I knocked the doctorate out. And from there, I started a multicultural center, rebuilt some units in student affairs, and just really, really loved it. And so it allowed me to do the strategy piece that I have found that I have loved so much over the years. And I got to teach, which was one of the most amazing experiences ever. I really gained a respect and understanding
Yeah.
for my professors because it's like, oh, they're not just doing this to be mean or because they're bored. They're doing these things for a reason. So
Mm-hmm.
that, I kind of fell into it. Now I come from a line of educators. I have two grandparents that were college professors, so it wasn't foreign to me, but I just never thought I would land there. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that did impact my decision to decide to go into entrepreneurship, because what I did find is that there were limitations that especially colleges and universities or other organizations run up against, that being an entrepreneur and specifically a consultant allowed me to work through.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have the same regulations or requirements, but I could still help people make change. And so that was the launching pad for this whole entrepreneurship journey. So yeah.
Oh man, that's so awesome. I know that a lot of people, especially now, like I don't know, and you've been around like students and younger, the people that are in the younger generation who say a lot. We hear a lot. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to get into. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And and I like this, but I don't know what I really love to do. I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I think a lot of that has a lot to do with social media now and how people feel like they have the option to be a YouTube star versus actually getting an education. Like it's just so
Mm-hmm.
much out there for people to do now that is kind of confusing. And then, they don't want to step into anything because they feel like maybe there's something better out there that I need to do. So let me not take this path. And so it's just a lot of just confusion, and they're really flummoxed about things that they want to do. And so to hear you say that, you walk through these different things, and this led to this, and you going here led to this, and then you ended up being able to do what it is that you really love to do by taking all
Mm-hmm.
those different steps throughout your journey to get there. And I think when we're in things at the time, we don't really see how they're all working together to put the puzzle together. All these pieces are coming together to get us to where we need to go. So, I think it is so awesome that you have that story and that you have that background, because you can really help someone else to see, okay, this is not as bad as I think it is. I'm gonna figure this out. Me and the good Lord, we're gonna figure this out, and I'm going to land where I need to land if I keep going and if I just trust the process. So,
Yeah.
I think that's so awesome. So I want to ask you this, because we're both Black women who grew up in the Black community, and so we do face different challenges that certain people don't face. And then this, not only just being Black, but again just being a woman in general,
Mm-hmm.
that's a challenge in and of itself. So I want to ask you, how has your voice and your influence as a woman, a Black woman in particular, been necessary as it deals with representation in the academic community, in the
Mm-hmm.
kingdom, and now even in the space that you're operating in now? And how has it influenced that, and how have you faced, or have you faced any challenges along the way?
I'm going to actually answer the second part first.
Okay.
So I have definitely experienced some challenges. I've been in several spaces where, being young, Black, and female was not the norm.
Hmm.
So, walking into the meetings where you're the only person that looks like you.
Mm-hmm.
Going to an event, I remember went to an event and someone assumed that I was not there as a guest, but I was there as someone who was serving at the event because I was one of the few African American people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Asked me to throw something away for them. So there have been, overt instances, microaggressions, all of the things. And so I think for me, knowing that I deserve to be there
Mm-hmm.
and reminding myself that I was just as qualified, just as valuable as everyone else in the space helped me navigate that. But it also, to answer the first part of your question, helped me to remember that when I was going into these spaces and breaking these barriers and, having the opportunity to be a voice, that I had to use that voice and that influence to help those people who weren't able to be in the room, if you will. So
Mm-hmm.
it was always very important to me if, when I supervised a staff, if I could go into a space where, they wouldn't necessarily be invited, if I could bring them in, I would bring them in. Allowing them to do things that wasn't necessarily in their job description so that they could get additional exposure. And just making sure that anytime I was advocating, that I was being the reminder that these people matter too. So you might be thinking that, oh, this doesn't have a negative impact, but let me explain to you why. And just not being afraid. It wasn't always easy to do, and it's not always easy to do, but you have to use those opportunities both to help yourself, but to help those that are coming along by side and behind you.
Yes, that is so awesome. And that is something that I think we in the Black community lack a lot of. We don't get the support from one another, and even the means and the resources as that serve as catalysts to get us to the next level, even though we have the experience, we have the knowledge, we have the qualifications. Because if a lot of times, if we don't do it for each other, we might not get that opportunity. We may not see that opportunity again. It's so funny. I was just thinking about yesterday. I don't know, just random thought crossed my mind. And I was thinking about how those in different communities get the support of all communities. Like, and we Black people, we support everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But us in the Black community, there is a limitation on
Mm-hmm.
how much support we get from everyone else. And so we have to have each other, and you being a means and an avenue and a vessel to be able to do that, to help other people, and not just Black people, just all people in general. Because here's
Right.
the thing: if you're qualified to be where you are, if you have done the work, if you have put in the effort to be there, I don't care what color you are. You can be blue.
Right.
I don't know. You
Right.
can be an avatar, whatever you are.
Whatever.
Whatever. If you deserve to be there, you just deserve to be there. And I appreciate and I applaud the effort that you're putting forth in order to help other people, because honestly, that's what it's all about. We're not
Yeah.
here to live for ourselves. We're not here to be selfish and to just, garner all of these things ourselves. We have to share the wealth, and we have to teach others, we have to help others, we have to give to others. And so I appreciate you and I applaud you doing that. I want to ask you this. I want to kind of just pick your brain about getting into the nonprofit space. So what kind of led you into that arena, and like, what was the ultimate motivation for you saying, okay, I enough of this education stuff. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. But like, I don't even know if that's what you said, me. But like, what led to you taking that step in your life?
It was about needing to do something different for my personal life.
Hmm.
I had reached a point in higher ed where I had gotten kind of burned out, and I
Mm-hmm.
think the pandemic definitely exacerbated those conditions. And so I just needed something where I could focus, because unfortunately in the higher ed space I was spread very thin, and so I wasn't really as effective or impactful as I wanted to be on
Mm-hmm.
specific issues. And so moving into a nonprofit with a singular focus allowed me the opportunity to focus on that and
Mm-hmm.
be what I feel was really good. And God just worked everything out, and it was what I needed at the time, for me to both be have an impact in society, because I'm all about helping people, but
Mm-hmm.
then also being able to take care of my first ministry, which is my family,
Yeah.
and making sure that I'm available for my children, and can enjoy life with my husband. Like, what's the point in having a family if you're never there, right? So it was that, and where I am, I really enjoy the work. I enjoy what we do and why we do it. It supports women and girls in our state. And so that's very much a passion of mine, obviously, as a woman with a daughter.
Yeah.
I want to see all of us win and be successful, so that, ideally we will work ourselves out of a job. We won't need the additional support. We wouldn't need the additional advocacy to help women and girls move along, especially when it comes to economic security. But
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how it happened. And so it was still within my interest. It was still something that I was passionate about, and just being willing to take a risk. And because, if you would have told me this was my path when I was 21, 16, whatever, I would be like, what? This doesn't even make sense. But it's like I would tell my students all the time, the things that you end up doing are not always laid out in some linear path with a checklist. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you just got to go for it sometimes,
Yeah.
and trust that even if you mess it up, let's just say you do mess it up, that God is able to fix it and put you back on track.
Yeah.
So yeah, it worked out perfectly for me.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. I love it. I love that you're able to do what you're passionate about, and do, even like you, again, you said what your first ministry was. You're able now to take care of your family, you're able to take care of yourself, and you're able to still take care of the people around you. So that's so awesome. And, I admire you being able to just take that step to say, okay, this this may not look like what I thought it was going to look, how I thought it was going to look, but then again, what does look like what we think it's going to look like?
That part.
Only God knows. And so he knows best, and he knows where we need to be, when we need to be there, how we need to be there, and why we need to be there, which is very important. So Mia, now I want to kind of go back to something that I know that you love to do as well, and help the church. And so I know you were talking about identifying gaps there, and the things that churches need to improve upon, and just need to help advance and grow their ministries. So how exactly do you do that, and where did you get your start? Like, what made you say, oh, wait a minute, I want to do this too?
So the way that I do that is going in and having a conversation, and just seeing, okay, this is where we are, and this is where we want to be, and what's keeping us from reaching that. And sometimes it's a lack of a resource, of whether human, financial, social, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then oftentimes it's just a lack of understanding. Sometimes it's a mindset issue. And so just really going in and having the conversation, and using the experience that I've had in all the places, right,
Mm-hmm.
to help fill in those gaps. So oftentimes I see churches who are struggling because they don't have necessarily the human capacity, the human resources, and the capital to do what they need to do. But it's because they don't recognize or realize that there are tools out here that can be used. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I don't want to call it worldly, but the things of the world
Mm-hmm.
don't always translate into the church, because there's nobody there to help make that connection. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what I do. And so I always say that church is a business, because we're in the business of helping God's people. We are in the
Mm-hmm.
business of people. And so we still have to run church like a business. So that means that there are business, concepts and tools that can work in the church
Mm-hmm.
without distorting the God who we serve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's often this fear that if I do these things that everybody else does in the world, that the church is some kind of somehow going to be diminished. And that's not the case.
Yeah.
And so the way I kind of fell into this was twofold. One, it was because my entire life, much like you, been in the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was when I went off to college that I really kind of saw this connection and this gap. I was like, we could do this at church. We could do this at church. And it was just like every time I would see something, I'm like, we could do this at church. And I began to get frustrated because I'm like, why aren't we doing this in church? We could, triple our impact, or we could advance so much quicker. And so it was both the exposure and the frustration that kind of was like, okay, rather than me sitting around complaining about what's not being done or how something could be done differently, why don't I just try to make it happen?
Yeah.
And so I just started reaching out to people, and they were like, absolutely. And I was like, well, and this is a whole nother conversation, but there's this idea that because it's church and related to Jesus and God, that it can't cost anything. You shouldn't have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and even having to work through my own mindset with that. But we can still do ministry and marketplace all together. So, and yeah, so I'm a firm believer in paying for what needs to be paid for, at the cost that it needs to be paid for. And so, and just because it's related to God doesn't mean that it shouldn't cost. And so, having to work through that. But once I got past that, it got a lot better for me. So.
Well, that's good. That's good. It's good to know that there are people out there working on, the church's behalf to not only just provide it with spiritual wealth and spiritual insight and just being there, as a body to help advance and edify the kingdom, but also to help it in its natural space, because we're still here on earth.
Yeah.
We're like, you can touch us and feel us. We are like matter. So we're in these spaces. So we need to make sure that we are impactful in the spaces that we're in the way that we need to be. And so that's awesome, because you don't have to utilize social media or the internet or Facebook in a way that perverts the gospel. You can use it in a way that helps to advance the gospel.
Absolutely.
So I think it's awesome that you're doing that. And so with you saying that, it made me think about your master class Unstuck, because it's like, okay, some people, not just churches, but some people are stuck in places where they cannot get to where they need to be, and they can't move forward. And so whenever you developed this program, was this program based on like your own experience in your life that kept you from being able to fully be who God has called you to be, or was it because you saw all of these needs in various places and you wanted to avail yourself to help other people?
It was both.
Okay.
It was both. So one thing I don't I don't talk about things or do classes on things or try to give people strategy on things that I have not walked out myself, because I just feel like that's just out of integrity. And so it was my own journey through understanding why I would get to a certain point and like just hit this ceiling, right? Or why I would be all excited and then something would happen and I would talk myself out of doing some things or what have you. And so that it was started with that. And once I was able to get to a point where I don't want to say mastered it, because we're always learning and growing, but gotten to a point where I had kind of gotten comfortable in recognizing these cycles and understanding how to move past them, that I was like, yeah, let me share this, because I was seeing it. I'm like, okay, you said you wanted to do this. There's a whole plan laid out for you. You said you heard God and you wanted to do these things. So what's the disconnect? What's going on? And so just helping people see that it all boils down to fear at the end of the day, because there's no way that something is good for you and you don't pursue it. So there's some, and it may not be an obvious fear like, oh, I'm just genuinely scared. Like it may be a fear of being successful. It may be a fear of people talking about me and not understanding and supporting, and fear of being rejected. So it's all of these things, but it's fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I just I'm tired of watching people sit in these spaces where they're just stuck and stagnant, and not moving forward. And so anything that I can do to just help them move past that, and recognize that, yes, you're going to have a little bit of something come up when something's new, when you're taking a risk, when you're the first to
Yeah.
do something, there's going to be that, but we can move past that. And so, yeah, I just want to help people, because I know once I got to the point where I was able to push past it, stuff just started to open up for me.
Hmm.
And I just want everybody to have that same experience.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So if you're stuck today,
If
if
you're
you
stuck,
feel like you cannot move past where you are right now, there is a master class out there just for you.
just
And
for
I
you.
guarantee you it will help you, because Mia, you are a living, breathing example of what it can do for you, and how you utilize what God has given you, and just what you see around you to get to the place to where you are right now. I'm really encouraged. I really am, because even in my own life, there are things where I'm like, okay, God, I don't know about that. Is that you talking? That my subconscious? Is that me? I don't know who that is. So I'm not going
Mhm.
to do that right now, because that don't look right. It doesn't look like it should normally look. This is not the typical pathway that people are supposed to take to do this. And, so I'm just really encouraged and inspired by you, and inspired by your life and your story and what you're doing, in what you're doing in the world, and not you're in the world, but in the world,
Yeah,
and what you're doing for the kingdom, how you are being a light and you're being salt, and so it's very, very beneficial to those who come into contact with you, and to the spaces that you're able to operate in, and the spaces you're able to frequent. So thank you so much for all that you do to help other people, and to also help those in the church community. We appreciate you.
thank
And,
you,
we we really do appreciate you. So, before we wrap up the episode, I just want to ask you if you would just maybe give a piece of advice, or some pieces of advice, to someone who feels like, okay, I don't know what's going on in my life right now. I don't know where I'm heading. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I need some help to see whatever it is that is before me, that I need to walk into, because I really just don't know. What advice would you give to someone who is having that struggle right now?
the first thing I would say is to still yourself and not get into this space of anxiety and stress. Because when you are anxious and stressed, you are not able to think clearly, you won't hear God clearly, and you won't be able to create. And so the other thing I would say is, I think a lot of people know what they're supposed to do on earth, but because it's not mainstream, or because they feel like it doesn't make sense to other people, and doesn't seem as if it's going to make them a lot of money, they kind of disregard it. And so what I would say is, trust that that thing that you get excited about and you're passionate about, or that really bothers you, that nobody else seems to care about, trust that those things are in you for a reason.
Mm.
Knowing that God sent you here to earth for a purpose that only you can feel. And it doesn't matter if somebody else is doing it. There's a way that you can do it that is unique to you, that the earth needs. And then I would also say, get some people around you who are, number one, saved, who can help be a good support and mentoring system for you, to help you talk through it and figure it out. A lot of times we do things that come natural to us that we disregard as being unique and gifts. So
Mm.
the things that we just wake up and do without any preparation, to us, it's like, oh yeah, everybody does that. No, they don't. And that could very well be your thing. And just trusting that it's going to work out. If you never take the risk, if you never try, you will never know. But if you know where you are, isn't where you're supposed to be, then you know your next step is somewhere else. So just take the next step. And, like I said, God will work it out. If you're trying to do the best you can, if you're following what you feel like He's telling you to do, He's going to work that thing out regardless of what happens. And so just stay faithful to Him first and foremost, because there's nothing that will happen for you long term sustainably without Him. So that's what I would say. But
Yes,
it's,
I love it.
it's in there.
It's in there. I love it. Oh, that's so awesome. Mia, that's so awesome.
Oh,
That's some really good advice on this beautiful Wednesday morning.
yes.
It is. I love it. I love it. I appreciate you again for just taking time out to just sit down and have this conversation with me. I know that it's going to bless and help someone out there who is receptive and who just has a heart to do what it takes to get to where they need to be. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
before we head out, I just want you to let everybody know where they can reach you and contact you, any social media handles or what have you.
Absolutely. So I'm primarily on Facebook. You can either follow me at Dr. Mia Phillips or Mia Danielle Maria, either of those two pages. And then I am on Instagram, Doc Mia GP6. So just send me a message, reach out, just follow me, see what I got going. If I can help you in any way, don't hesitate to contact me. But yeah, Doc Mia GP6 on Instagram, Mia Danielle Maria on Facebook, as well as Dr. Mia Phillips.
All righty. Thank you so much again, Mia, for joining us today on the
Thank
Traditional
you.
Millennial. Y'all make sure you tune in to the coming episodes. They'll be out at some point in time. I got to get my life together. But again, Mia, thank you so much. Enjoyed having you today, and we'll see y'all next time. Teach me your way.